let's talk about how the transition from Beyoncé's country album into a potential rock album connects to how she's explained her transformation into Sasha Fierce for performances. Now, there are so many clues pointing to Act 3 being nothing other than a rock album, and all of the evidence has always been right in front of us, and we figured that out. But first, let's talk about the font related to Beyoncé's January 14th, 2025 announcement date. And if you didn't catch our thread on this, I'll break it all down here, or you can click the link in the description to check out the thread for yourself. But when Beyoncé dropped this font, I immediately knew what I needed to do, which was research it, and my goal was to find any clues connecting this font to rock, because let's be honest, Beyoncé loves hiding hints in plain sight, so I got to work scanning the font to save everyone the trouble of trying to figure Beyoncé out, which seems to be impossible. So here's what I did. First, I took a screenshot of the date and uploaded it to a website that identifies fonts. Then tons of Gothic fonts popped up with names like Gothic Regular and Gothic Roman Regular. And when I researched the history of Gothic typefaces, I found that they're directly linked to blackletter script, and remember the term blackletter because it's crucial. But then from there, I used another website to try my luck at identifying the exact font Beyoncé used. And while I didn't find a perfect match, I discovered a similar font called Beyoncé Gothic. This discovery felt significant because the consistency of the Gothic style started to make sense. So going more into the history of this font, I found that the Beyoncé Gothic font is a modern blackletter typeface inspired by the medieval scriptures, making it bold, dramatic, and often used for titles or branding. And if you're wondering what medieval scriptures are, it include works like the Bible and Gnostic Gospels, ultimately meaning that this font has biblical roots. But now let's circle back to what exactly blackletter fonts means and how it connects to everything. So these Gothic style fonts, like the ones Beyoncé teased, are often associated with rock and roll, particularly heavier subgenres like heavy metal, and the sharp, angular appearance of these fonts visually mirrors the rebellious, intense energy of rock music, so you'll find them in a lot of band logos and album artwork where they convey a dark, Gothic aesthetic. So what does this mean? Well, the font style Beyoncé chose aligns perfectly with the aggressive and powerful image that many rock bands aim to project. But now, let's talk about the consistency. So the Gothic style doesn't just stop at the font, but it ties directly into rock and roll. And if we're talking style, then it would be the black clothing, dark makeup, also including those bold, dramatic expressions. And using a perfect example would be Beyoncé's Vogue magazine photo shoot. And in these pictures, everything about it screams pre-planned, from the red and black color palette, which is both deeply tied to rock and Gothic themes, to the motorcycle. It all connects in a way, and even the black motorcycles are iconic in the rock and roll culture, but which also could be associated with motorcycle clubs whose signature colors are black and red, which in my opinion gives the dark and aggressive Gothic style as well, with rock-inspired elements throughout the course of this year, just like she did last year. Like, for example, think back to when she wore that Prince shirt. It wasn't just a fashion statement, but it was a clue that ties perfectly into this rock era. And then, to top it all off, she even dressed as Prince for Halloween. And we went into more details about all of that in our Act 3 Will Be Rock video, so if you haven't seen that yet, definitely check it out. But I feel like we're going to start noticing more and more rock-related themes rolling out from now until 2026, but only if my prediction of Act 3 dropping next year is accurate. But I think this could only be the beginning. Like, I really believe Beyoncé will keep dropping more content. But now let's talk about how country transitioning into rock relates to Beyoncé's shift into Sasha Fierce. And well, it's simple. Beyoncé represents her personal side, while Sasha Fierce embodies her business side, which is like a transition between two personas. Like, for example, when Beyoncé wears her signature black hoodie, fans automatically know that she's in work mode. So to me, the Beyoncé album could represent the personal side of Beyoncé, and on the other hand, this potential rock album could represent the Sasha side of Beyoncé, with the energy, with the bold, commanding, and ready for business energy that she brings when performing. And a perfect example of that would be how her energy shifted when she performed Yaya, and how more energized she was, which could remind you of her Sasha persona. And this gave me another reason to think that a tour is on the way, because that was just a glimpse of what I think is coming. And Beyoncé herself has even said it, and I'll play the clip in 1 second. But first, think back to her 2013 Super Bowl performance, performance, which was Sasha blending gothic vibes with her powerful stage presence. And it ties into my theory about the horse transitioning from black, which would represent Sasha at the Super Bowl, to white, which would represent just Beyoncé at the Beyoncé Bowl. And what made me think of this was when she said, "She gone," which could represent Sasha's absence too. She coming! Which ultimately could highlight Sasha's return, in which to me would mean that she's basically saying that Sasha took a break, but now she's coming back. And I also wanted to point out that her doing this head movement is a signature move performers use during rock and roll performances. But to explain this all in shorter terms to me, Cowboy Carter was the Calm album, which is why it is said that it was supposed to be the first released, which would make sense being though that Renaissance was an energizing album, with Act 3 being the even more energizing album, which could represent the levels of energy rising until she ultimately brings it to Sasha's level of energy, bringing her back to the stage. So in conclusion to that, the best way to describe it is that Beyoncé will bring that don't hurt yourself energy, ultimately doing what Beyoncé showed us she was going to do and go out with a bang for the ending of this trilogy. And also with evidence presented, it can't be a coincidence that in this era, a lot of things are black and white, which is also Sasha coded, because not only does Beyoncé bring Sasha out on the stage, but she brings her out in a lot of music videos as well. And if you haven't noticed, a lot of Beyoncé's past music videos took the theme of black and white, and we've seen black and white in her GQ magazine photos, and even in videos and pictures she has posted to her Instagram. So you can also see the pattern of her wearing black in almost all of them, while also including a black cowboy hat instead of the white one. And on top of that, she wore a black cowboy hat at the same iHeartRadio Awards show that she mentioned the rock and roll related artists on. And in one of our last videos, we talked about her teasing the white cowboy hat during the Renaissance era, so it wouldn't be a reach to point out that she's doing the same thing in this era as well. But where else do we see black and white in the theme of rock and roll, right? And this is what made me come to that conclusion on top of Sasha's energy, signature color, and persona, making the energy of rock and roll and the style of the gothic aesthetic. But all three acts seem to represent different aspects of Beyoncé, with her personality being Act 1 Renaissance, which is all about fun, energy, and freedom, and with Act 2 being Cowboy Carter, which symbolizes history, including hers, and now Act 3, which could potentially introduce Sasha Fierce back, showcasing Beyoncé's business side and her gothic rock-inspired persona. Also, this theory aligns perfectly with how Beyoncé constantly studies her past work, reinvents it, and weaves it into her future projects, just like her Beyoncé Bowl performance echoed homecoming vibes, with the huge band mixed with her famous Dubai lift up, and her 2013 Super Bowl performance hints at it being called a bowl with a sprinkle of her Sasha Fierce energy.
Is your husband comfortable living with somebody as competitive and as ambitious as you are?
You have to ask my husband, but I think so. I'm competitive really with myself.
Right.
Honestly, like every time I start an album, I go and watch all of my performances and I try to figure out, okay, what is it that I could have done better or what worked? And really my references, I go back to myself and trying to better myself. So I'm really tough on me, more so than anyone else. I'm not a competitive person that walks in thinking about other people and how I can compete with them, or especially not my husband. Not at all.
And it seems like all of the theories I mentioned is not too far off being, though, that she looks back at her own work to find ways to improve, which was exactly what I had to do as well, by looking back at her work to find that pattern Beyoncé always goes by. So to me, Beyoncé is teasing us with all of these rock elements, not because a full-on rock era might be coming, but because it seems like she's setting the stage for it by slowly transitioning into it, just like I mentioned in our Look at That Horse Theory video. Like, really think about it, her mindset is evolving and everything we've seen so far feels intentional, so much as though that it's like she's giving us crumbs of clues while also preparing us for what's next without fully revealing it. And honestly, the evidence speaks for itself. Like, the way she ties these concepts together, from the fonts to the visuals, shows just how out of this world her creativity truly is, and how Beyoncé's mind operates on a level that's genius and unpredictable, and her work alone is is proof of that. And since we're bringing up fonts again at the end of our What Will Be Beyoncé's Next Move video, I mentioned how this potential up-and-coming era that could possibly bring dark, gothic, and rock reminded me of the Haunted visual, and it even has all of those same elements, and even the vibe while watching the video connects to everything I named, but that's not all I've noticed. And, well, one day while randomly listening to it, I noticed the B font on the luggage, and I never really paid attention to it in the video until now, and I know a lot of you have probably seen it, but it was something about it that stood out. Like, the font of the B gave me serious rock and roll vibes, and then it hit me that it also even looks identical to the font Beyoncé used for the date because of the sharpness of it, and it also looks like the same B I used earlier in this video. And the font of this GIF also came up under the rock and roll search when I found it, which can't be a coincidence. But on top of that, this is all from Beyoncé's self-titled album Beyoncé, and that had me thinking about how Beyoncé herself described Cowboy Carter as a Beyoncé album. So those clues alone makes me want to look back into her self-titled album to see what else might connect to her current work of today. But just when you thought that was it, then the cigarettes became a hint, which was crazy to me because this whole time I was trying to figure out why she keeps popping up with this cigar, and the whole time the cigarette clue was right there. But one clip is from the Be-Watch video she posted to her YouTube, and the other clip is from the Haunted visual where, as you can see, Beyoncé steps on the cigarette in both. So at this point, the clues can't even be clues anymore, but is just starting to become evidence of what's coming. And if you want a separate video on more clues in the Haunted video and how it relates to all of this, put it in the comments because there's more. And I also wanted to say that as we move into this darker era, I really hope dark hair Beyoncé makes an appearance because honestly, who could go wrong with dark hair Beyoncé? And I'll wait, but let me know what you think.